we're just going to take a minute or so here to let everyone file into the Zoom webinar room. We have quite a large crowd joining us today, so just letting everybody catch up and get logged in and get their audio and their cameras, the audio and video going so that they can see our presentation. So I think I'll start off with just a quick introduction. So my name is Todd Humber. I'm the senior editor for OHS Canada. I'm going to be moderating our discussion today. So I can see we've got quite a few people in the room now. So I think I'm going to officially get started. So welcome. As I mentioned, to those that were already in the room, I'm Todd Humber. I'm the senior editor for OHS Canada. This is our special webinar on creating a safe working culture. I'm going to be moderating our discussion today, but before I get to the introductions of our amazing panel, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. So you, the audience, you're going to be in listen-only mode. That means we won't be able to hear you, but we definitely encourage participation in today's session. So we've set some time aside at the end of this hour for a Q&A with our panel. Since we've got so many people on the line today, we may not be able to get to all the questions, but we'll do our best to get to as many as possible. You can enter those questions at any time using the question box. You can enter them, anytime throughout the course of our presentation today. And then at the end, we'll get to those and ask them. One other quick note, today's session is being recorded. You will receive a link to that by email in about 24 hours, so keep an eye out for that in your inbox. I would also like to take a quick minute to thank our sponsor today, Avetta. They made this possible, so we didn't have to have a registration fee, so we appreciate their support in sharing the best practices that you're going to hear today, and in just supporting the world of occupational health and safety in general. So now it's my pleasure to introduce the real stars of today. The companies that are speaking this afternoon if you're on the East Coast, it's still morning on the West Coast. They won awards at the 2022 OHS Honours Celebration, which is the awards program that OHS Canada does that sort of identifies, shares, and celebrates the best practices in the country. So we're grateful to them for sharing their time and expertise today. So real quick, I'm just going to introduce Melissa Gould. She's the Director of EHS for Linamar North America in corporate. We also have Zach Oliveira. Zach is the Group EH&S Manager for Skyjack, which is a division of Linamar. We have Stacia Baldwin, the Manager of HSEQ at MacKinnon Olding. And last but not least, we have Scott MacFarlane, who is a Project Manager at MacKinnon Olding as well. So thanks everybody for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation. So let's begin. And Melissa, I'm gonna put the spotlight on you to start. And it's going to be that exact thing. Where do you begin? If you're looking around your workplace, you want to improve the culture, you want to kind of build a culture that embraces health and safety, where do you start? What does day one look like on that journey?
So day one, I thought about this question ahead of time. So I think that the best place to start is talking to your people. And you know me, Todd, like I'm all about let's talk safety. I'm wearing the shirt that says let's talk safety, but you got to get out there, put boots on the ground. You need to talk to your employees. You have to ask them, what is it that they're doing? How do they do their job? What is your business about? Ask them if they could change something, what would they change? And what kind of response have they had in the past when they brought issues forward? And it's not just talking to your employees, you need to talk to your supervisors, your management as well, the same types of questions, so that you can pull together a response from all levels, so you can kind of see if there's any alignment around there. So where are people agreeing, where are they disagreeing? And then you can begin to start to prioritize items and put actions together. So I think, yeah, talking to your people, I think that's like a good place to start. Making sure that you're solution focused. So it's really easy to get out a code book and tell people what they're doing is wrong. But you'll have a way better result if you're actually working with people and trying to bring solutions forward and being a member of that team. So I always try to make sure that I'm solution focused. We have a mantra here at Linamar. It's how yes, not no. So don't tell me no, tell me how we can do this together. Like, let's have a conversation about it. And that applies to all areas of our business, including safety. I don't know if anybody else has anything else they want to add to that.
Yeah, so I'm sure they do. So Stacia, why don't we jump over to you? I just saw you unmuted yourself, so.
Sure, I was just going to echo what Melissa said. One of the first steps is building a safety program. And because in Nova Scotia, there are lots of, very small companies that don't even have a safety manual written. So starting there, but starting not just pulling one off the internet, it really needs to suit your company, and you really need to have input from your users, people who are going to use it. You can't put something on a piece of paper that says, you will wear 3 pairs of safety glasses when you're doing this task. It needs to be something that people can complete, and that's so they can have buy-in while they're doing it.
Wonderful. Thanks, Stacia. How about you, Zach? What's your advice on where to start this process?
Well, it was said, you got to listen to what the people say, and the people being everybody, not, it's right from management down, and management needs to lead the way. But at the end of the day, and coming from the Linamar, it is that approach. Don't say no. Tell me how we're going to do it. You have different ways of getting around things and getting things done. It doesn't just have to be one way, and we have to be flexible and open enough to listen to what other people have to say, because it could be something. It is. I always find there's also always something worthwhile listening to that someone tells me, and you have to be open-minded to accept that, because as a health and safety professional, you're not always right, and that may be a big lump to swallow with some people, but you have to swallow that lump and say, no, I'm not always right. Thank you, great idea, and that's how we got to work on, and make sure you do it in a timely manner. Don't lose focus on it. Feedback is good. Communication is good.
Yeah, and just to add, it's that you're not always right, but you also, like, as a safety person, don't always know the answer to everything. So making sure that you have like a good network outside of your workplace, colleagues, resources that you can grab, because you don't need to have all the answers. And there's certainly going to be many times throughout your career where you're going to have a new situation that you don't know how to handle. But it's important to make sure that you have a good network and resources at your fingertips that you can get to find those answers.
Great, good point. And Scott, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I think where you begin is identifying where you want to be, setting smart goals, and then identify the gaps and the risks that currently exist, and then build a plan on how to achieve those goals. And from there, just focus on achieving the result, but also keep in mind that getting to that result, getting to that reward of completion is just as rewarding as the end product. So focusing directly on where you are today, how you're going to get to where you want to be tomorrow, and the effort that's required within that.
Great, thanks, Scott. And just to address something real quick, just taking a side note, in the chat, I did see some commentary, just people asking if they were muted and their cameras off by default. For the audience, rest assured, yes, we cannot see you or hear you. Your cameras and audio are not on, so no worries there. And a reminder, if you have a question for the panel, please use the Q&A box, not the chat function, because we're not going to be able to monitor the chat function as we go through this. So please ensure questions come through Q&A. So anyway, back to our conversation. So Stacia, my next question is for you. So, as you go down this journey of creating a safe culture, we know that no process is ever perfect, right? So what mistakes did you make along the way, or what would you have done differently in hindsight, looking back at your journey to creating a great culture?
Well, this is going to sound a little bit cheesy, but I don't really think there are any mistakes. And I think one of the biggest mistakes you can make is being afraid to make mistakes. We all started somewhere, early on in the career. I'm sure we've made errors or, errors in judgment, some mistakes, but when you're trying to make a positive change, there certainly aren't mistakes. And if you do make what we might call a mistake, it's okay. as long as you learn from it. So I reflected quite a lot on this. One of the something that can hinder progress when you are trying to make change is forcing fast change. You have some people that some stakeholders that may be pushing. They want to see results. They want to see numbers, but forcing that change, you may be able to fudge some numbers where it's not going to help your safety program in the long run. So forcing that fast change is not going to be sustainable. To gain sustainability, really, it's not thinking of one size fits all, as I sort of previously said, but what suits your company needs, and implementing initiatives without or changes without buy-in from employees, from supervisors, from your foreman, from whatever positions. Your Josh committee is a huge asset when you're making changes. So you need to get that buy-in from them. And some mistakes I've made in the past is trying to say, well, I've heard another company do this, so let's apply that. But it may not suit your company. And having that input from those employees will help that and to achieve sustainability when it is employee driven. Particularly as Melissa and Zachary stated, is when somebody comes with you with an idea, if an idea for a change or initiative is from an employee, you can make a big impact with that, especially if you advertise that was an employee driven change. A lot of great improvements that we've made are employee driven and employee initiated as well. So some mistakes you can make within that is not listening. If you have an employee bringing something forward, as Zach said, some people, they may not want to hear, hey, here's an idea, or here, why don't you shift what you're doing? They don't take feedback well. So that could be a mistake that you could make, is not receiving that feedback in a positive manner. And then another mistake that I have made in the past is starting and using a lot of my time to develop initiatives before really understanding what the desired outcome of success would look like. Again, you hear, I'm really excited to learn here today some of the initiatives that Linamar is doing, and maybe I can implement it at MacKinnon Olding, or maybe not, but really kind of looking at that and thinking, is it possible to implement at MacKinnon Olding? And then what would that look like for us? And what would success of that initiative look like? Really looking at your desired outcome and how to achieve that before implementing any initiatives that may have the big pizzazz with them, but may not function for your company. So that's some things that I have done in the past that I look back on and try to move forward and improve and shift within our health and safety team and within our management at MacKinnon Olding as well.
Wonderful. Thanks, Stacia. Melissa, I think you've got something to add there.
Yeah, just when you made the point about not like bringing forward feedback when you don't even know the business yet, I was nodding so excitedly, because that's exactly a mistake that I've made. And that's why in my opening question, I said, like, it's easy to come in with a big code book and say you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. But it takes skill to learn the business, and you can't discredit. You're working for a company that's open, their doors are open. So they're successful to some degree, if not super successful. And so there's smart people that work there. And I don't think for 1 minute that anybody comes to work with the idea that they want employees to get injured, or they don't want to be safe. So it might be that their experiences, they haven't learned to use safety properly. Maybe they're a smaller company and they just haven't been exposed to the same code and education. So I think our role as safety professionals is teaching them what we know and what we've learned. But then also we need to invest just as much time learning the business, learning how the jobs function, so that we can better serve our customers, which are our people. So yeah, I've made the same mistake. I see when we hire new people, fresh out of school, I see them do the same, make the same mistake that I did, where they want to come in and they just want to change everything because they've learned a particular way of doing it in class and through their instructors and their classmates, but it doesn't necessarily work for our business. So they come in, they're gung-ho, and they want to make these changes, but they haven't really even learned how our business works. So oftentimes not oftentimes, but sometimes those changes don't really fly because they just don't work for how we do things, like our business hours or our culture. So I think it's important. It's very important to know the business that you're working for. So I totally agree with you on that.
Great. Zach or Scott, do you want to chime in there?
Sure, yeah. I think taking the 20,000-foot view back and seeing how your business operates is key to the success of implementing a positive safety culture. So step back, have a look at the business, see how it operates, and then start implementing small changes in collaboration with your team. Get the buy-in. I think it needs to be extremely collaborative. It's not just one person saying, hey, today we're going to wear 3 pairs of safety glasses. I think the buy-in has to come across the board from your team. And if you implement small things and you build on that, I think you're going to be successful.
Great. And Zach?
I mean, everybody talked about the cross-functionality, and that's what I believe in. The engineers are not always the smartest persons. The safety people are not always the smartest person, and the employees are not always the smartest person. But if you take everybody together and actually look at, as Melissa said, the business, look at your process and understand the processes, you collaboratively will always come to a mutual agreement and the buy-in. If there's no buy-in from either party, you're up against a brick wall. You're not going to go anywhere. We need to buy in, and we need to buy in, especially from an employee's perspective, to understand, because they're the ones that are actually going to be doing the work. And it's fine to design something, but when the hammer hits the nail, you need to make sure the people that are doing it understand and have the buy-in. And that's why it's critical to listen to what an employee has to say. And I always say, if there's a quiet employee that never speaks, when that employee speaks, you better listen to what they say.
No, for sure. Great point. And Zach, I'm going to stick with you for a minute. So if you think about, a safe culture and implementing that, are there things that you've seen, or I guess what I'm asking about is benefits, right? Are there benefits to a strong safety culture that you didn't expect?
Yeah, I'll tell you one that was a little surprising. The hierarchy of controls where you talk about elimination first, if you can. I had a couple of those brought into key processes that we do here, which is welding and painting. And it's fun to say, we could have less injuries and stuff, and less environmental impact to the community if we got rid of those 2 processes. And you're absolutely right, it would be, but it's not a feasible business plan for what we have. And people having part shortages and supply shortages from the supply chain management portion, we've seen that in the COVID years. But what we had to share with some of these individuals is, okay, yeah, we can't eliminate these processes, but we do have engineering controls, and then we had to explain how they work. We also have some monitoring issues that we have hygiene reports to explain the exposures and why we need this process and plan. In saying all of this, it was a better getting people to say, hey, hierarchy of controls, let's get rid of it first if we can. That was a bit of a surprise, because I was just expecting normal, hey, can we put a PPE, can we put a fan, can we do this type of stuff? But in saying all of that, it intrigued me to think, because Linamar's got, a net zero carbon footprint by 2050, and it's not that far off. Because, there's the old adage, the days are short, the days are long and the years are short. 2050 is going to come by very, very quickly. And I'm proud to have individuals not just think of PPE, but thinking, hey, how do we get rid of it entirely in itself. So the elimination one, I wasn't expecting too much, but that came as a little surprise that, yeah, that's how we got to think. And going forward, we need to think that way into the future, because that's how you're going to get better.
Go ahead, Stacia, do you want to?
There we go. Okay. My
Yeah.
computer glitched there for a second.
No worries, we can
I
hear
was
you.
just, I was just gonna say that something that Scott and myself had talked about was when, you know, creating safety culture, something that surprised us was a shift in attitude, that we could see not just safety attitude, but that the general company morale was increasing because we were having more positive conversations on site. We were not just talking and about what was going wrong, but talking about what some successes were. And that morale really increased when we started seeing improvements across safety. And that was across the whole business, down on site, in the office, in the shop, kind of everywhere we work, morale really increased. And then when morale increases, it's like this great loop where people are positive and they want to bring ideas forward. And then those ideas create initiatives and new programs, which creates more morale. And it's just this great loop that you get into that we didn't realize how impactful it could be within a company like, especially like ours, where we're spread across different sites. So really the morale was a big, very positive and unexpected shift for us.
Great, thanks. And Scott, I'm going to move to you for the next question I've got here, which is it's a bit similar, but just, you know, I want to get an idea from you guys what it feels like to walk into a workplace that has a strong culture. So if you think about your workplace, let's randomly say 5 years ago, how does it feel different? Does it feel different, or does it feel different when you walk in?
Absolutely. So we've invested heavily back into our safety department, and we've been focusing on expanding and taking new ideas and molding them into our culture. So there's a huge morale difference, as Stacia was talking about, from 5 years ago. So I've been with the company for just over 5 years ago, and there's been a huge change. It's fantastic. So some of the positive benefits that we're seeing, our safety initiatives are more collaborative, and they utilize stakeholders from across the country or across the company. So what's happening there is we're getting input from all walks across the company, and we're implementing them back into the culture. And it's been fantastic initiatives, new ways of reporting. And that leads into our JOSH committee. So we're now having record attendance, whereas previously the JOSH committee felt kind of like a mandatory obligation. And now we're getting huge buy-in on that. And a lot of the findings that the JOSH committee is bringing forward, they're all being implemented back into operations. So that's been incredible. And we also have engagement direct to our safety personnel on site. So one of the changes we made was ensure that we put additional support down on our field level operations. So the site personnel, they're going to get mentored by the safety personnel, asking for opinions right there on site, and that's coming through open and clearly, and the communication is coming right back. So that's just the continued development of our culture, and we're working to improve it every single year. But in the last 5, it has increased dramatically. So it's been a very positive output.
Great, thanks, Scott. And then Melissa, Zach, at Linamar, how does it feel when you walk into your office there? How in your sites is it tangible, the difference?
Yeah, like for myself, I've been at Linamar for 17 years, and Zach, I think 16 years, Zach?
15? 17 in April.
Yeah, yeah, we've been here a really long time, and I've worked at multiple locations, and I've had career progression, and I've been involved in our plants here and our plants in the other countries as well. And there's no contest, like definitely from back when I first started to now, like not only do our plants look totally reformed. They're very clean. But compared to when I first started, like I've told people when I first started here, I really hadn't been on a lot of job interviews. I'd had a couple of jobs at other companies before I came here. And I didn't know I should ask for a tour. And so I did it. And then I get hired and I go on the shop floor, and I had come from a very different environment, culture. I'd never been in automotive machining. And like I was just shocked at some of the things I saw. Like, not only was there lots of machines and lots of people, but just the machines weren't clean. Like, the place needed 5S. So in terms of now 5S is one of our measurables that's on our stepping stool. So all of our facilities are very, very clean, and they have programs in place. And just as something as simple as a housekeeping program improves so many low-hanging fruit safety type issues. So it's a great program to implement and sustain. And because it's one of our measurables, it is something that the plants focus on at all levels. So yeah, like we've come a long way. Definitely, even in my role now, I have all levels of our people coming to me and asking me questions. And I think that shows that they have trust in me, that they trust my answer, they value my response, they want my help. And then I always, we've talked a lot about listening to people and asking for that feedback, but a key is, if you're going to ask someone for their feedback, you better make sure that you do something with that, and that you get back to the person and follow up, because that, I have a story. One facility that I worked at here, I started and we didn't really have machine equipment checklists in place. So I was tasked with getting that process up and running. And so in my head, they had just never done this before. And an employee, a long serving employee, he came to me and he said, we used to do this. He said, we used to have checklists on all the machines and we were trained on how to do it. And he goes, I would check off and I would mark things that were wrong. And my supervisor never came around and looked at it. So he said, I stopped doing it. We all stopped doing it. And eventually when the employees weren't doing the checklist, the supervisors totally fell off the road of following up and checking them. So it just goes to show you that if you have something, you need to put in that effort for that follow-up, and that employees don't have a problem bringing issues forward. They have a problem with not being listened to and someone not taking action. Now, the answer might not always be yes, but they want to see that there's been action taken and someone's listening. So, but yeah, I love it here. And I certainly, everybody knows there's lots of health and safety jobs. So I certainly could look for a job elsewhere. But what I love about Linamar is the progression, the challenges, and it makes me happy to see the changes that we've made throughout the years.
Great point, Melissa. And just a follow-up question there, you talk about trust, which I think is such a big thing to get among your workers, because often, you know, if, as you said, if the concerns aren't addressed or if they're ignored, or conversely, if they kind of view health and safety as someone just coming over to yell at them because they're not wearing their gear properly, how do you build that trust? What's a good way to do that? And that question is to the whole panel, not just to you, Melissa, but any thoughts on how you can build that trust with the workers so that you get that great two-way communication?
I was going to touch a bit based on that one. When I first started, I didn't have people necessarily come to me or our health and safety committee or our health and safety coordinators as they'd walk on the floor. You'd have to approach them to ask for ideas or suggestions and see stuff. Now, if I go to any of the plants and I'm just looking around, and whether it be with the supervisor or health and safety coordinator, I'll get called out by the worker to come and give me, and they'll come and ask me or inquire about something. That never used to happen. And in order to get the trust to answer that question, because it goes with what Liz was talking about, working together and listening. You have to listen. You have to get that feedback to them. It may not be exactly what they want to hear. And that's exactly, like when people say, oh, we got to eliminate this, get rid of this. Well, we have other ways of doing it. Can we work with those other ways of doing it? And is that acceptable means? But, you have to treat them as a person that has an idea. And the idea you can build on. It may not be the whole solution, but can you build on that idea that makes them want to come back, even if it's a little bit. But if you ignore that, you're not going to get anything from anybody. And soon it'll be like Melissa says, the check sheets stop being used. The supervisors are happy because they don't have to do it because nobody's doing it. And that's not the culture you want. You want everybody having the faith and the trust in that they can approach anyone, whether it be a health and safety person, a committee person, a manager, or a supervisor. They need to go to that person. And when they do that, everything falls into place. It's just a matter of timing.
I was just going to build on that a little bit. I think that's exactly the same for us, Zach. And building trust is relationships is a big part of it. Finding some of your key players, finding your people who might be, the gossips of the company could be your best safety champions, because they can spread word better than a safety bulletin can. And if you can share some of those actions that you've taken that were brought forward by employees and share that across, you don't just build trust with that one individual. You're showing the rest of the company that the changes that are being made because of ideas that are brought forward. And just to echo what Zach said there is, sometimes the answer is no, that we can't do it. It's not feasible, or it's not possible, or whatever the case may be. But you always have to get back to the person. And then, so if the answer is no, we can't do it, a really important part of that is why. Why can't it be done? And then maybe there's a different way to do it. That's again goes back to what Melissa said about having connections within the safety community or within whatever industry you're working in, asking how they're doing it, leaning on your peers to bring forward other solutions that maybe you haven't thought of, or somebody within the team or within your employee base hasn't thought of. But that trust is a key part of it. It's a great feeling, as Zach said, when people come to you to ask questions after building that trust and having that engagement. And that's not something that you want to lose, something that you want to keep building on. And by taking action, you can build on it. Something that we always do, we do our best at it, is tracking action items. So if somebody comes to somebody with a question or a suggestion, is that we track that in an action log to make sure that they do get closure. And we do get back to that person to make sure it doesn't get lost in the million things that are happening on a construction site throughout the day.
All right, thanks, Stacia. It kind of ties into the next question I want to talk about, the next kind of topic, which is really looking at some of the weakest links that we see in culture, because culture is easy to talk about. It's easy to sit in a head office and say, this is what we're doing. But how do you ensure that that culture is lived every day? And let's maybe talk about the on-site supervisors, right? They're often far away, depending on your industry, the type of work you're doing. But they're not in the head office every day. They're out in the field, working with workers. How do you ensure that those folks kind of walk the talk on safety, buy into the culture that you're trying to create? And Zach, maybe we'll start with you on this one.
But that one, it's always trying to show to me was the benefits to everybody. A supervisor, if they can see a benefit in their role, and some of it, because safety is systemic. You have your quality systems, you have your engineering process systems, you have your safety systems. And when you can show a benefit to a supervisor of i.e., and we had less paperwork, less injuries, less workplace inspections, items that you have to open, less observations of stuff. When they see a reduction in their work like that, that also translates to a reduction in the quality defects. If you have an improved safety system, and I've been able to show our historically in the past how if we had high incident rates, our quality was also poor for that time period. And that was one of the things that we tried to explain to them. And in order to do some of that, we did that. But we also hold daily meetings with the supervisors where some management people attend. And part of that supervisor meeting is the accountability portion. Open items are publicly, there's a public forum listed, and we get to see the supervisor's name and what they have open and stuff like that. And the feedback, what have they done? Because again, communication is key to getting things done. And they're held accountable to update us and get everything addressed in a very timely manner. If you don't have accountability, you'll never be able to walk the talk. And that's one of the things that we stressed on, is holding people accountable, but also realizing it takes a village to raise a child. So although I'm held accountable for it, I'm going to need help from different resources. And those resources you have to build a relationship with to get them done, so you can close out your items and show the people on the floor that we are doing this, and this is a serious matter that we want to take seriously and continue to improve on. And like I said, when I have people talking about elimination of processes down in the future, that's great, because they're thinking so far ahead, and it's just a matter of time before that does happen. So accountable, or else walk the talk. It just ain't going to run.
Okay, thanks, Zach. And Scott and Stacia over at MacKinnon and Olding, how do you guys ensure that this,
yeah, we take a kind of a top-down approach. We make sure that we try to lead by example from kind of the ownership down, and then we have open dialogue with our supervisors. It's an open platform, open discussion, bias-free talk, and then we try to give them the support and the resources that they need to implement safety culture on their work sites. So if they need an extra safety personnel, we provide it. If these gloves aren't working and they want to try another type of glove, let's get those gloves, let's trial them, let's see how that works, and also incorporate the Josh committee findings back to the supervisor to try out. So it's a lot of trial and error, and it's just trying to get the buy-in from the supervisor, and when they're committed with buy-in, you see positive results.
Yeah, we had some tough eggs to crack, nuts to crack, so to speak, when I first came on at MacKinnon Olding, and something that obviously, building relationship, building and trust, we can talk about that all day. It's a huge factor in it. But having consistency makes a big part. A lot of our supervisors, they've been working together for 30 years. They're friends outside of work. They talk about everything and anything. So again, if you kind of have built trust with one of them, it spreads throughout. If you've done something, what we consider outstanding to somebody, it spreads throughout. But creating standardization across our sites, so it's whatever site you're working on, it's not this client site, that client site. You're working for MacKinnon and Olding, and it's consistent across. So supervisors could, if they wanted to, jump from site to site, and they don't need to make that shift. It makes it easier on them. Making things, I guess, as simple as possible, while also knowing that as adults, we're generally intrinsically motivated. So explaining the whys to people of why something is the way it is, or why it needs to push forward, can kind of help some of the more challenging supervisors get out of that, well, this is the way we've always done it loop.
Great,
we've definitely seen some success, some success there, and I'm sure that anybody from MacKinnon Olding who's watching is laughing a little bit about that one.
Great. I want to take some time now and talk specifically about what you're doing at your organizations, both at MacKinnon and Olding and at Linamar. And maybe Stacia, we'll just stay with you since we've got you talking. But so what exactly, kind of walk us through what you put in place, what that implementation what that implementation looked like. That would be helpful.
Sure. I wanted this question. I pushed this question for Todd because I wanted to steal what Linamar was doing mostly. because I mean, safety is about beg, borrowing, stealing, sharing of information, and how can we make some of these changes that we're talking about across the company? What are some programs that we can maybe share with each other? And so something that we have done, and we've done for the last, I think, 4 years now, is we implemented a hazard identification program. And what that is it's employees, they're already on site. It's a little card that they can have with them. If they do something to correct something, it could be, you know, they see a ladder that is in poor condition, they tag it out of service, they bring it back to the tool crib. It's something they need to do anyways, based off the internal responsibility system. But by filling out that card, if there's like a fun side of it, we do monthly draws, we do bigger draws every couple of weeks. So there's a little bit of incentive to go along with it and make it a little bit more fun. And then it also allows us as a safety team to track what are the hazards that they're seeing on site. What are some of those areas that maybe we do need to look at? Are we seeing a lot of ladders that are getting taken out of service? And what can we do? So it's there's a lot of components to it that help improve, and it allows us to follow up on action items as well. Because we track them all in a large system, and we get thousands of them every year. So it's quite a cumbersome process, but it honestly is a really positive process. It makes a lot of really good changes. So our hazard ID system kind of even could be considered almost a near miss reporting system. And we leverage our JOSH a lot more. Scott spoke openly about our JOSH committee, and 5 years ago it was just a checkbox almost. And now they're much more effective, and we're able to leverage them. And so a couple of things we put in place with our JOSH committee is implementing formal PPE and formal equipment trials. Because what had been happening in the past is that we had individuals that would say, hey, I saw this glove at this other company, let's get some of those. I saw this piece of equipment at this other company, let's get some of those. And then we would get it or not get it, depending on what it was. But what the JOSH committee does is that we bring in samples of these ideas that people bring forward. We have people trial them, which ones work, which ones don't. And we do it in a formal process where they are required to actually fill out a form if they want it to move forward. We've seen some really, really good ideas come out of that. And then just one last thing that I just wanted to share that is something that we've improved on in the last few years, which is monitoring our statistics. So we were getting a lot of paperwork. We fill out field risk assessments every day, toolbox talks every day, hazard IDs every day, feel like so many things every day, inspections. And we weren't doing really much with them other than reviewing them and giving feedback. And so we actually monitor our statistics a lot closer to gain information from it, as I said, with the hazard ID program. So those are just a couple of things that we've used that we've already kind of had at our disposal, and just leveraging a little bit more and making some extra changes within the company. I don't know, Scott, if you wanted to add anything more to that.
Yeah, I think one other thing that we've done is we've brought in some third-party companies to aid us in decision making and have a look at our overall systems and see if there's improvements. So we've relied on some consulting as well and experts in specific fields, and we've brought them in and utilized their knowledge and expertise and to foster positive results. So that's been a really, really nice implementation as well that we've seen, and that's relatively new over the last couple of years. Stacia's done a great job connecting with these people through her, and Melissa brought it up as well, through her safety connections within the industry and getting the right people in the right places. So that's been really positive for us as well.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And so Melissa and Zach, we'll turn it over to you. And I think at some point we should probably talk about your shirts as well, because those are a part of what you're doing over there.
So what are we doing? So yes, we have these snazzy, bright orange shirt. It says safety on the back, and on the front, Zach says, let's talk safety. And then the word safety is interpreted into all of the main languages at Linamar. So all of our safety, health and safety people, so our coordinators and our specialists, we all have these shirts. And we've purchased a different color for some of the Joint Health and Safety Committee members as well. So we wear these regularly on the shop floor. It's a way to identify yourself as the safety person. So people know who to go to, like when you're out on the floor, if they want to come up to you and ask questions. And then the whole message, we came up with it together. It's the let's talk safety, because we need to talk about it. We need to talk about what's working, what's not working, how can we make it better? And that doesn't need to be a difficult conversation. It's just a conversation between you and I, or me and the guy down the road. And we just need to make sure that we get together and we're talking about what's going on and how we can make things better. So that's sort of the whole messaging behind the shirts. So some things that we do at Linamar, and it's certainly not like Linamar didn't have a good safety culture and then all of a sudden we have a good safety culture. We have for over a decade, we've had ISO 14001 and OSAS 18001, which is now ISO 45001. So we do have a management system for both environmental health and safety, and we are third-party registered. So that certainly supports the process. We have that third party coming in. Now in 2018, for our automotive side, we switched to what is called a corporate certificate. So they no longer audit every location every year. Instead, based on their requirements, they'll pick between 4 and 7 locations, and they'll conduct the external audit at those locations. With the understanding though is because it's a corporate certificate, if there's an issue found at one location, we need to have a process in place to read across that issue to all our locations and make sure that we're looking for that, auditing for that issue at all locations, and then correcting it if applicable. So for example, if there was an issue with like a driver not wearing a forklift seatbelt, found during the external audit. I need to make sure that the message gets out there to all our plants and that all of our safety people are looking for that and taking appropriate corrective action. So I certainly think things have improved since we've been doing more read across rather than operating individually and not really talking to each other. We meet regularly as a health and safety team. We share information. It's that networking piece, but it's internal. So there's over 20 of us that regularly chat about safety issues, and you can bounce ideas off of. And I do think that's one of the biggest benefits of being a safety person at Linamar, is that you have that internal network, and you can certainly go across the street to some other workplace and not have those contacts. So it's nice because Zach and I also participate in Ontario. We have advisory committees through Workplace Safety and Prevention Services. It's one of our health and safety associations in the province of Ontario. And Zach and I are both members on the advisory committee. So we're able to be involved at the start of new legislation and new initiatives by the government, and also network with other senior level safety professionals through that as well. So those are some of the things that we're doing at Linamar. There's lots of programs, like we have lean suggestion program. We have our what we call 5S plus S5. So S5 would be the 5 main hazard categories that not all hazards are important, but when we do have issues, they tend to be along 5 different areas. They're machine guarding, lockout, electrical safety, confined space, and material handling. So we have a compliance audit program that we've been doing since 2009. And in those 5 areas, and we've evolved it to now include, it includes 5S2, and it's another one of our KPIs that all of our facilities are rated on, and our bonuses are paid out against. So that definitely helps motivate people towards taking appropriate corrective action. No, Zach, if you
Yeah,
have
well,
anything.
I was going to say with that one, when we did with the shirts, and one of the things we do is we also have the HSEQ members 1 day a week. They spend about 15 minutes in different areas of the plant. So when you have 6 committee members from the workforce, there's 6 areas that this is not the workplace inspections. This is where they go on their own, arrange it with their supervisor. They'll go to a different area and look for observations. Good, the bad, and the ugly, as I call it. And they give it to us. And then because we have those open forums where we meet with the supervisors, these are discussed in there. And then the supervisor has to come up with the feedback and how to improve it. So the visibility of our team, I'm hoping, like, 700 people in one plant, almost 600 another plant, that everybody becomes safety like that and looks for it. But the supervisors are now being held accountable for that. When I'm out on the floor, and that's one of the things I do every time, is that every time an employee calls me out to talk to me about something, I actually, and Melissa, you talked about the lean suggestion, I put that in on their behalf as a lean suggestion. So if you were to call me outside and talk to me, whether it be about the floor or a container, I'll go back and put it in, because what we do is like a monetary value. And I always tell them, by the way, if you're surprised, I did this on your behalf. And then they get a free voucher to spend, at least in Skyjack dollars, as we call it, that they can get into gift cards and a whole bunch of different apparel and stuff like that from our marketing department. But employees go out there, and the visibility is really out there. And the accountability on the supervisors to provide feedback is what is expected. And as a team, we have to work together. Like I said, it takes a village to raise a child, and a supervisor cannot do it by themselves. They need support and resources from the whole team.
Good, thanks, Zach. We're got about just under 10 minutes left, so I think we're going to move to the audience Q&A, because we've got a ton of those to get through. So maybe we'll do a little bit of a rapid fire. First question we've got coming in is for Scott. So this one here says, how do you, as a project manager, ensure that your safety standards are met, the culture is upheld, but also you've got that added pressure to get the project done on budget and on time, or even ahead of schedule? How do you balance all that?
Key to success there would be total collaboration. So just having the right stakeholders work with you to complete the task. So you make sure that everyone's on board and you have an open dialogue within. Basically, I'm speaking from a site perspective. So being on site, having the superintendents, the safety team, all working as a single unit versus operating in independent silos. So having that open dialogue across the team, and then getting that down to the field level, and then being out there and being part of the project is key. And then obviously continually monitoring the success and coaching and mentoring right from the field level right up.
Great, thanks, Scott. Next question. This is for anybody, so whoever wants to chime in. From an organizational perspective, how important is a formalized safety management system? Is this something that you have documented at your organization?
We've been certified third-party registered for the environmental management system and the occupational health and safety management system for over 10 years. So, and as Melissa touched base on it before, even Linamar itself as a whole has already a good safety culture. And I'm not going to say great or excellent, because I hold that open for improvements every single year. So every single year we're good. And we have to leave room to get better every single time. But if you don't have a management system, you need to start with one, because that's going to be your basis, your foundation that you can build all the other programs up on top of. You need to have that.
And just to add quickly to that, so You're certainly able to implement a management system without a third party. You can download the framework. There's lots of choice out there. You can find the one that works best for your business, and you can implement it without having the cost and the expense of a third party to come in and certify you to that management system. But it does provide you that framework to set up not only environmental and health and safety, but also quality management and your business management as well. And when you have that framework in place, it's certainly easier to get stuff done.
Wonderful. Thanks, Melissa. The next question, it's a big one in terms of what we talk about. So any suggestions here on how you can shift if you've got a management team that is focused on financial performance, how do you get them to shift to that mindset of caring more about safety? Because the way this question is worded, they basically said some leadership groups don't have a buy-in for safety, but now that they have to, they look at it as an expense, right? So how do you shift that mindset?
I'll start, because I don't think I want to work for a company that doesn't have their mindset on financial performance, because that's certainly going to drive how our business grows. So I don't think it's that we don't want them to focus on financial, but you have to realize that you're not in the business of making things safe. You're in the business of selling safety. So you have to figure out what motivates your company. So if it's financial that motivates them, then you have to figure out how to build that business case for health and safety. And there's certainly lots of tools online that can help you do that. But you have to figure out how to sell them that business case to show them how safety is saving money or avoiding cost by having certain programs and procedures in place. So I think it's just tweaking that the mindset of the question a little bit, because we certainly want to work for companies that are financially motivated, because we want to work for successful workplaces.
And it also comes down to almost like a let me show you how. So, give me a year and let's see how much money I can save you by having you spend some money on safety upfront.
Great, thanks, Stacia. Next question here: how can employee discipline affect safety culture, positive or negative? So if you got a disciplined employee, what does that do to the culture?
I think.
Oh, sorry, Zach, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think whenever accountability, and I'm a strong proponent of it, but it doesn't mean you chastise and you fire someone all the time. Sometimes it's an education thing that you have to do. But if you don't discipline someone for doing something wrong, you're going to start losing your good culture. And it's important that people realize that there's expectations for everybody, and it's for the good of everyone, not just one person. You have to listen to how and why, and and I plead this for you with the HR and everybody, before you discipline someone, you need to investigate it properly, because what one person perceives is not what actually happened. And let me give you a brief situation. I had someone once who held a crane pendant in their hand, in their mind, think that someone else bumped into a cabinet because they were operating the crane pendant. And because of surveillance that we actually showed that the person that was complaining about it was actually the one holding the pendant. In his mind, the perception was that he forgot how he was doing it, but whatever it was, he was blaming someone else that wasn't the culprit. So in a case like that, you still have to have some sort of discipline, because of, but I'm not saying you fire the person every time you do something wrong, that you're not going to get anybody coming to you and not trusting you. But if the punishment fits the crime, so to speak, excuse me all the adages because I use those, it has to be fitting. It's just like a child and parent relationship. The child doesn't get to do what he or she wants all the time without a parent approving and a parent accepting it and thinking that it's safe for the child and safe for the person to do it. It's like at work. You have to make things safe for everybody, and that's why it is what it is. And accountability is part of it.
I would somewhat disagree, and maybe I'm just misunderstanding what you're saying, Zach, is, you know, you talked about investing, but it really needs to come down to the root cause of it. Because if somebody's violating a safety rule and it's obvious that they're violating it, I think the question needs to be asked of, were they trained on it? Were they aware of it? And did they actually understand it and how to apply it before any discipline came across? And I think that might have been sort of in what you were saying, but I just wanted to clarify that from my opinion.
Yeah, that's what I said. You need to investigate as to why they did what it is, because perception of one person may not be the perception of something else. So you have to investigate why it was done. And even if they were at fault, I'm not saying to chastise and fire them with any, it depends on the circumstance, or like it really is. But you have to have accountability for knowingly doing something wrong. You just can't ignore that.
Yeah, I've just seen companies that somebody gets hurt and then they immediately discipline them. And it's not at all the right thing you can make. It's a very negative shift in attitude. That's why that investigation part is so key.
Yeah, and I'll say something with, again, that is when you point the finger at me, there's 3 pointing back at you. So remember that.
Great one, Zach. We're at the top of the hour, but I'm going to squeeze one more question in just because I think it's a good one. Basically, this person's saying they've built a really good rapport with their workers, a lot of trust, but they've noticed that the submission of near misses are quite low. So how do you encourage your workers to submit that so that the potential incident doesn't happen and that you can actually get, you know, proper reporting and stats?
Think of an initiative to make it fun. So we had I think the first year that we implemented our hazard ID program, like a leading indicator program, I think we had 70 submissions. And then we started to reevaluate, how do we bolster that? How do we encourage that reporting? And so we came up with some ways to make it fun and enjoyable for all workers. And we started doing draws and different things. And we went from 70 to over 3,000 the following year. So I mean, that's something that we did that seemed to work well for us.
Yeah, and giving people the reasoning why, of why they're important, why near misses are so important. Sometimes there's low reporting of near misses because, one, people don't know what a near miss is. What's the definition of a near miss? They just don't understand. And why is it important to report them? You know, in safety, it's hard to prove what you've prevented. It's hard to show that, you know, by putting that guard back on, that you've now saved somebody from losing a finger. You can't really prove that, but you can give, you know, other examples that maybe you've seen across. And on the note of 1,000, I saw a question come in asking how we track our thousands of hazard IDs. We have a huge log that we track them on, and we track all of our corrective actions, make sure they're all followed up on. We have a target each year to make sure that we close 100% of our action items.
Great, thanks, Stacia. We're going to have to end it there. Unfortunately, we have a lot of questions coming that we couldn't get to, but just rest assured, the audience, we're going to look at those as part of our coverage with OHS Canada, see how many of those we can kind of answer offline, because we will be doing some coverage of this topic in the wake of this webinar. So Melissa, Zach, Stacia, and Scott, on behalf of OHS Canada and our sponsor, Aveda, thank you so much for your time today, sharing your expertise. I appreciate it. I learned a lot. I know you guys learned stuff from each other, and I know the audience did too. So to the audience, thank you so much for joining us. As mentioned, you will receive a link with a recording to this webinar in 24 hours. So have a safe rest of your day. Enjoy the upcoming weekend, and we will see you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.